Hi, I'm Gina, creator and host of Feminine Roadmap Podcast, the podcast that is designed to have real talk around all things midlife and strategies to help us live a more vibrant second half. It is my deepest desire to help other people shift the conversation toward empowerment, toward vibrancy, toward excitement about what life has for us and what we can bring to the world, how we can each individually shine our light. So I invite you to grab a cup of something wonderful, to join me each week or when you can, and join me in my living room to have these conversations. And if you are enjoying this, please take the time to subscribe wherever you listen, rate my podcast, and share the episodes that help you, the episodes that encourage you. Let's build this community together. Welcome to my tribe. I'm so grateful you're here. Hello, Feminine Roadmappers. Welcome back to Feminine Roadmap Podcast, the podcast that helps you navigate the challenges and changes of midlife and to live a more vibrant second half. Today, my guest is going to be talking about menopause. She is passionate about showing women how they can thrive in their menopause years. She addresses our feminine health from a physical, mental, and spiritual point of view. Angela Counsel is a naturopath, a certified lifeline technique practitioner, and a personalized health coach. She is helping guide women through menopause with ease. Angela, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Angela is joining us from Sydney, Australia, and I almost got the day wrong, but thankfully, with the help of it took a village, but I got it right. Angela was fine. I was confused, and I'm really excited that I got it right because, Angela, you have some great resources and you have a great mission to help women. All of us go through this unless something chemical happens, right? So can you please tell me, what is it that led you to focus on this mission and message of helping women thrive through menopause?
So I've been a naturopath now for nearly 20 years. And interestingly, when I very first started, I had very young children. And I've always found that I've always worked with women, primarily with women. And I normally work with women who are a few years behind where I am. So when I first started, I had young children. So I was working with women who were having babies. Then as my children grew older, I was working with women who had younger children, and then as they get to school age and everything. So when I got to perimenopause and then menopause, it just seemed natural that my next step was to step into this space and actually because I had gone through it. I'll be really, really honest. I didn't know much about menopause before I went through it myself. I knew that we got hot flushes and had a few mood swings. That's about all I was taught when I was learning to be a naturopath. And then when I came into this stage of life, I realized there was a hell of a lot more to know. My experience was, hot flushes for me, they were there, but they weren't a big deal. But my experience was something that I was not expecting. And as I was going through all these things, trying to work out why my body appeared to be falling apart, why I was pain all the time, why I couldn't lose weight, and I just kept putting it on, and I was trying to find the answers because I'm going, but this isn't right. I eat a healthy diet. I've got all, I had most of the boxes ticked, but all of a sudden my body just started to change. So that led me on a bit of a mission for myself. And then as I spoke to other women, I realized other women were going through the same thing. And it wasn't just the physical, it was also the emotional. And for me, that was just that change of, at the time when I was kind of coming through my transition, my youngest child was just finishing primary school. Now, since my eldest is in university, my youngest now is in her last year of high school, so she's going to university next year. So there was kind of there's all these changes happening. I was no longer like a hands-on mum. My kids were growing up. They didn't need me anymore. It was like, who am I? What am I here for? Who needs me? All this stuff alongside of the physical. So And as I spoke to more and more women, I realized that this was very, very common, that this was a common story, but I knew that there was something going on. And it wasn't, yes, I knew about menopause, but I knew it wasn't just about the hormones. And I had to delve deeper for myself to work out what it was. And that's kind of how I got here. And I've been working in this space for the last, I don't know, menopause specific, probably the last 5 years, but I've been working with women and hormones for nearly 20 years. So I've kind of always worked in women's health, but very specific on hormones for the last menopause for the last 5 years.
You know, it's one of those things that is a universal experience. I think it was you that said puberty equals menopause.
Yep.
There was a social media post and I was in reverse. And I was like, yep. Oh my goodness, it makes total sense. And all you did was write the word puberty and the equal sign and menopause. And I was like, shut the front door. Holy cow. It makes total sense. And that brings me to a question or a thought that I would like you to expound upon. You know, we have so much information, misinformation. A lot of physicians admit they're not trained very much on women's health. There's this gap in what we're going through, but all women go through it one way or the other, whether they've had a full hysterectomy and they are immediately in menopause or it happens naturally. But our bodies are designed to go through puberty and through menopause. And we're scared of it because the messages that we hear is it's dangerous, you're going to get cancer, you're going to, it's like really dark things. And I'm like, wait a minute. Just the other day, I was like, okay, we're designed to do this. Something's not right with the information. So I'd love to hear your perspective on just the journey of it being something that our body goes through. Do you agree with my thought process on that?
Oh, totally. And I could jump on my soapbox a lot about this. It is, and I'll kind of clarify this, what I say about puberty and menopause, because I get lots of pushback on this. When we look at it from a hormone point of view, as we come through puberty, basically our hormones are gradually increasing until we get to a stage where they kind of level themselves off. But it can take up to 5 years for a girl to go through these, and this is why girls have mood swings, they have acne, all this stuff. But many girls do not ovulate when they very first start their period. So that's kind of a little bit of a misconception. So it can take up to 5 years for a regular ovulation to start happening for girls. And unfortunately, young girls are going into puberty a lot earlier now. So we have girls at the age of 8 getting their first period a lot earlier than it was in our days, which used to be on average 12, 13 or so. But it still takes quite some time for those hormones to regulate themselves and for us to be getting a regular ovulation. So on the other end, basically what happens is menopause is basically it's a winding back of that clock. So we go from the higher level of hormones that we're required every month to produce eggs and to be reproductive and all of that. So we're going to wind that back down again to a stage where we were prior to when we were in puberty. Now, it can take quite a few years, and menopause can take 10 to 13 years, that transition to go from fully reproductive down to a lower level of hormones. And we don't go with no hormones. We don't need as much hormone when we're in menopause if we're not ovulating every month, we're not producing an egg, we're not preparing our body for pregnancy. So, bringing hormones down, it is natural. And that's what you're saying. It is natural. We've always done this. But the message is that this lowering of hormones is that there's something wrong. And the reason why women are having, there's lots of confusion going on, but why women are having kind of probably a bigger issue now than they did in the past was because as the hormones come down, so as our ovaries stop producing the hormones, because during our reproductive years, primarily most of the hormones are made in our ovaries, and the brain is connected to our ovaries. So there's a communication channel going between the brain and the ovaries. And once the ovaries are no longer producing eggs and we're not getting estrogen, we're not getting progesterone from the eggs and from the ovaries, what happens is the brain has to switch its communication from the ovaries to the adrenal glands. Now, our adrenal glands have the ability to make reproductive hormones. So they have the ability to produce estrogen and progesterone. But now this is the big but, and this is why women have problems. The adrenal glands primary role is to keep us alive and produce adrenal hormones, so stress hormones. So when we are highly stressed and we're living a highly stressed life, our adrenal glands will produce the stress hormones before it will produce reproductive hormones. It doesn't need the reproductive hormones to stay alive. It requires the stress hormones to stay alive. So this is where women start to come into problems, because we have lived a life and are often living a life that is highly stressful. Just with the way we live our lives, we're running around, we're mothers, we're running businesses, we've got corporate roles, all of this stuff. And then we have to look at the food that we're putting into our body. If it's not healing our body, it's stressing our body. We're exposed to all of these chemical toxins, which stress our body, also impact our hormones. So we've got all these stress, and then we put emotional stress on top of that. So our adrenal glands is spending all of its time producing adrenal hormones. So it doesn't have time, it doesn't have resources, particularly if we're not eating the right foods and we're not putting the right nutrition in, to actually produce the reproductive hormones. So this is where the symptoms come, because now our ovaries aren't producing the hormones, our adrenals are not producing the hormones they're supposed to be producing, and then all of a sudden we start to get all of these symptoms. And so what happens is then women are going, well, I don't like this symptom. And rather looking at, why do I have this symptom? They say, just give me a pill to fix up the symptom. I've got a hot flush. I'm putting on weight. I've got foggy headedness. I've got this, I've got that, I've got that. Give me a pill to fix that. And, instead of going, well, why do I have this problem? The body knows what to do, but it's not doing what I'm expecting it to do. So why is that? So part of this is because I believe, and look, this is my opinion and some people don't agree, is that women have disconnected from their bodies and they actually don't listen to their bodies. So their body's speaking to them, they're not hearing the message. They just want to slap a pill on it, because we've come from, we've grown up in a pharmaceutical age where whenever there's a problem, we just take a pill. And it really started at our generation. Wasn't so much in our mothers and grandmothers' generation, but our generation was very much this pharmaceutical age where pharmaceutical companies were giving us, solutions to problems, and quite often creating problems and then giving us the solution to it and telling us that there was something wrong with our body. But you don't have to worry, I've got a pill to fix the problem. And before that, we didn't even know we had a problem. And so, so this is where women are not listening, because they've been taught that all they need to do is take a pill and that will fix the problem. And this is part of the issue and part of the message. So the message that's now out there at the moment is, if you don't take HRT, you will have osteoporosis and you'll break your bones. If you don't take HRT, you will have a heart attack and die. If you don't take HRT, you will have Alzheimer's and go crazy. So they're basically saying all these things are going to happen to you unless you take HRT. Now, that is not true. And we actually, yes, it is true that when the hormone levels drop, we lose protection of the hormones. But this is then when we have to take responsibility for ourselves. If we want strong bones, we need to be doing the things that give us strong bones. And that's eating a healthy diet. That's moving our body and exercising, weight-bearing exercising. So making sure we're getting the right nutrition. If we want to, protect our heart, we need to be eating well. We need to be moving. If we want to protect our brain, we need to be eating well. We need to be using our brain. So this then puts the responsibility back on us as an individual to say, well, hang on, where have I been neglecting my health and what can I do about it? So, because I see so many women who get this message that if they don't go on HRT, they're going to get all of these conditions, and they are so scared. So they may not even have symptoms, but they go to their doctor and say, I want HRT because I don't want to have a heart attack. I don't want to break my bones and I don't want to get dementia, because that's the message that's out there at the moment. And to me, that's not the right message. It's not a truthful message, but that's a message the pharmaceutical companies are pushing. And part of the history around this is in early 2000s, there was the Women's Health Initiative, which basically came up with results that said and the nurses study, which said that HRT increased your risk of breast cancer. And then all of a sudden, all the medical professions stopped prescribing HRT. Prior to that point, HRT was one of the highest prescribed drugs in the world.
And we're talking Premarin. Yes,
the Premarin. Yes, the Premarin, yeah. So you can imagine the hit that the pharmaceutical companies took when all of a sudden doctors stopped prescribing. And then the pharmaceutical companies kind of kept trying to push it, saying, no, it's safe. And then they came back and said, oh, well, no, that study was a flawed study. No, but then people were still scared. But in the background, there had been some integrative doctors and some compounding pharmacists who'd started to do some stuff with plant medicine. And they took a plant called wild yam and they started to create what is called bioidentical hormones. Now, bioidentical hormones are claimed to be exactly the same as our natural hormones. And when you take them, they're safe. So then women started to go, okay, well, maybe I'll start looking at that. Now, the pharmaceutical company at this stage was not part of bioidenticals. And the medical profession saying they're dangerous because they were compounded and
you can't regulate them. You don't know if they have enough. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the pharmaceutical companies, they watch what's going on. And they're going, hang on, this stuff is selling. So what they're going to do is they're going to create bioidentical hormones, what they call bioidentical hormones, or now they're called body identical, I think. And we're going to make this in a factory. In essence, we're going to reformulate HRT. We're not going to use synthetics anymore because people are scared of it, but we're going to use bioidentical, which really, when it comes down to it, is not exactly the same as what is made by our body, because there's molecules, they're called cis and trans, so they're actually back to front. They look very similar in the body, and the body treats them the same way. But the problem with this is that when you're on bioidenticals, whether or not it's through patches, whether it's in gels, whatever it is, there's no regulation of the dosing. So our body can naturally regulate the level of hormones that are required depending on what's going on in the body on a daily basis. So it actually makes the changes that are required. When you're putting this stuff on your body, in your body, whatever, you're just taking a dose. And one day maybe the dose is going to be right. The next day maybe it's going to be too high. Next day might be too low. So because you're taking a standardized dose and it's not being changed, it's not being regulated by the body. Now what we've got the potential of is that the body will get too much hormone. And when we've got too much hormone in the body, now we've got the risk, particularly if we've got, because we know that too much estrogen in some bodies, depending on your genetic makeup, increases your risk of breast cancer. And that's one of the reasons why doctors are very reluctant to give women who even bioidenticals when they've got a history of breast cancer. But then you see the other side of it, oh no, they're completely safe because it's what the body makes. And yes, it might be similar to what the body makes, but it's not the dosing that the body might be using. Because the dose, the body doesn't dose, it regulates its hormones as required. So, are they safe? I think it's too soon for us to know the answer to that question, because we haven't been using them long enough. At the moment, it's a really big experiment, and the message is, because now all of a sudden the pharmaceutical companies are really pushing this, and here in Australia, it's not so much of a push, but I know in the UK, and I'm not sure if it's the same in the US, there is a really big push. Over in the UK, there's a lot of celebrities who are basically going out saying everybody needs to be on HRT. HRT saved my life, blah, 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 all this stuff. But, I question how much money from the pharmaceutical companies is sitting behind that, because there's a really big push over there. As I said, hasn't reached so much here in Australia. And US, I think, is probably similar to the UK, but maybe not. They're very militant over there. And I quite often, because I know you follow me on Instagram, when I make certain comments about HRT, all of a sudden I get slammed. And for a long time, I actually stopped doing it. But then I went, hang on, actually, there's people that want to know what I've got to say. So I just kind of let those comments, but I can get slammed. I get personal messages. I get trolled. I had one woman who say, I just follow her just so that I can just say everything that she does is wrong. And to just basically she said she was following me because she just wanted to troll me. Oh, that's fine. Okay. Best thing about Instagram, you could just block them.
You know what's really interesting, though? There is a conditioning that our generation, like you said, has kind of gone through.
Yep.
And people look at you askance when you do things differently.
Yes.
Because it's expected, because if I'm afraid of something and I've been told that this is the right way, I might genuinely want to help you by getting you to do exactly what I'm doing. But like you said, I've had someone on my show who has BRCA gene. And so it runs in her family.
Yeah.
And so that puts her in a completely different category. And unfortunately, there's no way for every doctor to know everything about every woman's body, every man's body. It's impossible. So when you talk about listening to our bodies, where does a woman who's maybe followed the dialogue that they've been fed, and it's scary because we do hear all the bad things that are going to happen if you don't follow the protocol, and it scares people. And I'm digging to find, if our bodies are designed to do this, I want to go beyond that conversation. So what can a woman begin to do to empower herself to separate from that dialogue that's scary?
Well, I think the first thing is, listening to podcasts like this with you and actually searching for women who are going through this time of life with relative ease, or they've embraced it. And there are women out there. And I know that when I was, going through all this stuff, what I looked for was older women who'd already been through it. And I was starting to talk to women, and I'd see one woman say, oh, honestly, best thing that ever happened. My period stopped and I just kind of breezed through it and I feel so much better now. Then someone else would go, oh no, it was the worst time of my life. So I just started to speak to other women, observe other women and see what it was they were doing differently. Like, what was the difference? And because that kind of, I'm a bit curious, and I always kind of look at that and I'm thinking, okay, so is it got something to do with the food that they eat? Now, I saw that some women were vegetarians and they were doing a great job, but then other people were vegetarians and they weren't. And then keto, and I personally used to always do keto. But once I got to my menopause transition, when I started to put on weight, keto didn't work for me. In fact, I was craving carbs. I couldn't stick to a keto diet, just wasn't working. So I was, because I'm a naturopath and nutritionist, I was kind of looking at the foods. So what is it to do with food? So I started looking at different things. And this is when I started to get into, and I learned about personalized health, genetic-based personalized health. And when I kind of discovered it, was almost like, my God, this just opened my world up when we realized that everybody is different. Everybody has a different solution. And we can kind of bring it back down to some basics, but we can understand. So we all have a genetic makeup. So we all have a set of genes that we got from our parents. But that's not the end of the story. Yes, genes are important, but it's whether or not a gene is expressed or not expressed, so turned on or turned off. Now, this very first came to me many years ago when I was listening to, he is an American, he's an integrated doctor, started the Functional Medicine Institute, so Dr. Jeffrey Bland. And he said, back to what you were talking about, the BRCA gene. He said, 80% of women who have the BRCA gene go on to get breast cancer. He said, I don't want to know about that 80%. He said, what are the 20% who aren't getting breast cancer and have BRCA? And that kind of clicked something in my head at the time. And now, because of what I do with personalized health and genetic-based personalized health, I get it, because we've got a gene. So you might have the gene, but the gene is not always switched on. Certain things switch it on. And this is what we call epigenetics. So yes, above the genes. So epigenetics is what influences our gene. So what turns the gene on? It's to do with the food that we eat. It's to do with our environment. It's to do with our stress. It's to do with our relationships. It's to do with it's everything to do with lifestyle turns a gene on or off. So you could have the gene, but just because you have the gene doesn't mean it needs to be expressed. Now, because everybody has different genes, different things express differently. So when I kind of discovered this, that's when I realized that, and this is the same for menopause, it's like, why is it that not every woman goes through menopause the same way? And another thing that kind of gives me a little bit of a bee in my bonnet about is when someone says it's normal. So a woman says, I've got XYZ symptom, and they just get to, that's normal, don't worry about it. To me, that is dismissing them. It's not normal. Common, but not normal. And we've got to distinguish between common and normal. So it might be common for women to experience hot flushes. It might be common for women to have joint pain. This might be common, but it is not normal. Because if it was normal, everybody would experience it. So what is normal? Because some women don't have hot flushes, some women don't have, joint pain, some women have this, and so we've got to really define common versus normal. And once again, this is where our genetics plays a role, because depending on our genetic makeup, how your mother went through menopause gives you an indication of how you might go through menopause. But we know we've got a key to actually changing that, because we can actually change our epigenetics. So just because you have a specific gene doesn't mean it needs to be expressed. So this is the work that I do, whereby allowing women to, number one, know that they are an individual. So just because someone goes through, has one symptom, doesn't mean you do. You have got the control over that. And I've probably gone way off your question. But
no, because it's not a straight answer, and I think that's the important part of the conversation. Is it's a conversation. It's not a set solution. That's what I'm picking up.
Yeah, it isn't. And some women might need some hormone replacement for a short amount of time. There is some women who are going through quite severe symptoms, and they may need some symptomatic relief to kind of bring that down, whilst they're addressing what's going on underneath. And generally it's stress and things like that. But if a woman is having these severe symptoms, we've got to look at why is that so. Now, women who have a hysterectomy will do, because they, particularly if their ovaries are removed, they have a complete cessation of hormones straight away.
It's a shock to the system. It's not gradual, right?
Yeah, that's right, because the brain hasn't had time to recalibrate itself, brain to ovaries from brain to adrenals. So your ovaries are just removed, and the brain's going, it's just sending these messages to nothing. And then all of a sudden, this is where we have really severe symptoms. This is where, hormone replacement will be a benefit whilst the brain recalibrates itself into the adrenal glands, but it's not a long-term thing. The same with chemo and things like that. So some medicines will put you into an earlier menopause, or what we call medically induced menopause. Being on the oral contraceptive pill, in fact, is a medically induced menopause, because it stops ovulation. And this is another thing that, women don't get this, because, when you're on the pill, you don't ovulate. So if you're not ovulating, you are in menopause.
What's the long-term damage of that?
Well, once again, it causes an imbalance in hormones to start with. And the longer you're on the pill, the more of an issue it becomes, because your body gets used to only, and this is the same with hormone replacement as well. If you're only way your body is getting hormones is via a pill or a patch or anything, after a while, it will just stop producing its own hormone. And if you've been on the pill, I was on the pill for 20 years. It took me a long time to get my body back into balance after I came off the pill, because your body doesn't need to produce hormone. If you're sticking a pill in your mouth every single day and delivering some, what we call exogenous hormones, that's being delivered every day, the body doesn't need to do anything. It just goes, oh, well, I'll just stop making my own hormones. So when you stop the pill, all of a sudden, now you've got a withdrawal, because the body's not making hormones. You're not putting hormones in there. And that's when a whole pile of symptoms can happen. So this happens with women as well, because I've had women say to me, well, my doctor said if I go on the pill, I will stop menopause. It's like, no, if you go on the pill, in essence, you're putting yourself into menopause. And when you stop taking the pill, you're going to get all these symptoms. So, most general practitioners, which is what we call them in Australia. I'm not sure what you call them, primary care practitioners.
It used to be general practitioners, but now we've switched to primary care.
Yeah, probably to do with the health insurance.
Absolutely.
So most of them are not trained in hormones. The majority of doctors are not trained in hormones. Even OB-GYNs are not trained in hormones. Some are, unless they've done additional training, the majority are not trained in hormones. So, and I'll say the same for naturopaths. The majority are not trained in, we're trained as general practitioners, even as naturopaths, we're general. Unless someone's done specific training and has a specific interest, they don't understand hormones. But this is where we've got to start, if we start to think, because women have been taught that the primary part of, like, the big event when it comes to your monthly cycle is a period. It's not. It's ovulation. Ovulation is the event. And as a result of ovulation, you will get a period, or you won't if you fall pregnant. So we've got to learn more about ovulation, because ovulation is what controls these hormones. Because it's when the egg is released that all of a sudden we get this burst of progesterone. And before the egg is released is when we get this lift in estrogen. So it's all about ovulation. When you stop ovulation, you have stopped the menstrual cycle. And that's what the pill does. Because the bleed that you get on the pill is not a period. It is a withdrawal bleed from the hormones.
Really?
Yeah, because you haven't ovulated. So you're not. So when they originally created the pill, way back in the 50s, and it was created by men, what they did was it was actually only 21 days that you took it, and then she just kept taking it. But women went back and said, no, we're not bleeding, so we don't feel like we're women. And they said, okay, so they want to bleed, let's make them bleed. So what they did is they gave you 21 days of hormones, 7 days of sugar pills, which created a withdrawal bleed. So it was a withdrawal from the hormones that you were taking that was causing the bleed. And we as women call that a period, because that's kind of what we've been taught. But in fact, there was no ovulation. So without ovulation, there is no period. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. It's a little bit mind-blowing.
This is how disconnected women are from their cycles, because most women don't know this.
We're miseducated.
Totally. Because we've been taught that there's something wrong with our cycles and we need to control it. That we need to be in control of hormones. We need to be in control of our cycle. We need to be in control of our reproduction. And yes, totally agree that we should be in control of our reproduction and our hormones, but not by taking something externally. We can be in control by understanding our body. Mm-hmm. And I find it very, very sad that I work with women who are basically coming to the end of their reproductive life, and I have to teach them about their hormones. There's something they should have learned when they were, first getting their period. So I'm teaching them at, like 42, 52, what they probably should have learned when they were 12.
Yeah. And I think that's a pandemic of its own, isn't it? It's a mass issue.
It's a dismissal of women. There's always been a dismissal of women's health issues, across the centuries. And part of this, a lot of this is to do with history as well. Because in the past, we go back to before the 14th century, and it was women were the wise women. Women were, they're the herbalists. They're the ones, the medicine women. They were the ones who, supported the community and everything. And then, then there was this change with the Industrial Revolution, and, and things kind of changed. And that's when we started to get into medicine and then surgeons. There's actually a book called Green Pharmacy, and it talks through a lot of this stuff. But, then there we that became elite. So medicine became elite, and it was for it was for the elite. They could have a doctor and all of that. And everyone else used to get the wise woman, the herbalist, the medicine woman. But then came the witch trials, and basically women were eliminated because of their healing powers, because they were seen to be witches. So, tens of thousands of women were just slaughtered by society that wanted to shift more into, they didn't know they wanted to shift, but they were shifting more into that medical model. And that's just got worse and worse and worse, where women's health has been dismissed over the years. The word hysteria, that comes from women. And that was, we believe is probably a lot of women who were going through menopause and who were having all these changes and things. And they were just saying, well, they're hystericals put them into an asylum, lock them up. So yes, women have been going through menopause, and some of them have been, it's not always easy for them, but they were dismissed. And when they, say that this is the way I'm feeling, oh, that's just you're hysterical, we're going to lock you up. And so then women stopped talking about their cycles, and even the bleeding and all of that. It was something that we were ashamed of. Our bodies, we were taught to be ashamed of our bodies. So that then over time became our culture, that we don't, as women, talk about our periods, we don't talk about our cycles, we're ashamed of our bodies. And we do our best to kind of minimize the impact in our life. And now we're, living in 21st century. It's like, it's an inconvenience to have a period. It's an inconvenience to go through menopause. Or it's all an inconvenience. The only bit that's celebrated is being pregnant. That's celebrated. But even birth, we're not really talking too much about because birth's not the most, it is a beautiful, experience, but it's also a little bit, gory and things like that. We don't talk about that side. We do celebrate the pregnancy, because that's showing the world that we're fertile and we can reproduce and do what we're so-called meant to do. But everything else to do with our cycles,
it's shameful.
Basically, and it's an inconvenience. And this is also, coming through menopause, it's an inconvenience to have hot flushes. It's an inconvenience. And yes, I get it. It can be tough. For me, my biggest symptom, as I did have a few hot flushes, but no, they didn't worry me that much. But pain. I did not realize that pain was a common symptom of menopause. And I was in unbelievable pain, joint pain, body pain. I didn't sleep for 2 years because I was in so much pain, and I was trying everything to get rid of the pain and didn't understand what was going on. I now understand what's going on and understand the role that estrogen dropping and all of that. So, once I learned what was going on, and I made changes to the way I live my life and my food based on my genetics, pain just disappeared. And so did the weight. So I lost 24 kilos in my language, which I think is about, 50 pounds. I think it's
something like that. Now that's something I do want to ask you, because right now there's a big old thing going on Instagram. I see it all the time. All these different products. They have Dong Quai in them. They have curcumin and all these other things. And I'm not criticizing it. I'm observing that there's all these products that are helping women get the metabolic, what's your metabolic thumbprint, what's your hormonal, you got to know your hormone type so you can lose the weight. But it's like $70 a pop. And there's a lot of women who can't just investigate 10 different products at $70 a pop to see if they'll work. And so there's a bit of a frustration, because we had the whole HRT education. And now I'm not saying these products don't work, but there's this, you feel like, am I just going to have to suffer if I don't spend all this money? So I'm kind of curious, can we talk about solutions that don't rely on an external thing?
Yep. So, because that's exactly what I do with my clients. And what it is, and as I bring it back down to, we start with genes, and it doesn't require testing or anything like that. It's about understanding your body. And I start with body shapes. We do lots of different measurements and things like that to determine what we call it a health type, but basically what your one of 6 broad classifications of a body type. And then from there, we get very individual. And whilst I do that in my programs, and I have a tool that helps to do all that, what it does is it helps women reconnect back to their body. So I use this tool and say, for you, based on your genetics, your epigenetics, it would be better if you actually started the morning slowly and you didn't rush around like a chook with your head chopped off first thing in the morning, because your body is a slow start and it actually needs that calm time in the morning. And you do your exercise in the afternoon, so rather than doing it in the morning. And you would say, well, what has that got to do with it? Timing plays a really big role. And when I can teach women that, and then I say, look, just try it and see what it works. And they go, oh my God, I cannot believe how different my life is. Weight just drops off. And it's not just about the timing, but that plays a really big role, and how often should you be moving? For some women, they need to be moving every single day, but they only need short spurts of energy, whereas other women can get away with only, exercising 3 times a week, but they need to be doing like at least 90 minutes each time, because they're slower start. So it's recognizing what your body requires. And all of this is actually within us. It's all intuition. But unfortunately, we have actually disconnected. So if you can reconnect back to your body and don't believe what you've been told, that the best time to exercise is first thing in the morning and you've got to eat 3 meals a day or 2 snacks a day and go to bed at this time, and start to actually question it. Yes, that is right for some people, but it's not right for everybody. And start to actually, you can start trying, does intermittent fasting work for me? Well, yeah, it works great for some people, but it won't work for others. But your body will tell you, because if you're someone that needs to eat 5 times a day and you try to intermittent fast, your symptoms will get worse. You'll be hungry all the time. You will lose muscle, so your body will actually tell you that it's not right. But then if you're the right body type to only, to do intermittent fasting or only eat a couple of times a day, your body will thrive. Now, personally, I intermittent fast, and that worked really well for my body to drop the weight and to drop the pain. I also, as I said earlier, I used to do keto. I also dropped a lot of my meat intake, and I'm not a vegetarian, but I don't eat as much meat and I eat a lot more vegetables. So that works really well for my body. And now that I do that, I'm healthier. I don't have pain. My weight is where it is. But someone else, that's not going to work for them. So it is starting to listen to your body. And you can try different things and see how your body reacts. But at a base, even before that, the thing that I would say the majority of women, and there's a few core things, eat more vegetables, because most women are not consuming enough vegetables. So eat more vegetables. Make sure you're drinking lots of water. Drop out the processed foods. So all your additives, processed sugars and all of that. Sugar comes from plant foods, so from fruit and vegetables, but it is more vegetables than it is fruit. So, that's where you get your sugar from. You can't get it from plant foods, not from jelly,
candy bar.
That type of stuff. And the big one, and this is a big one because I'm sure there is no different in the States to what it is here in Australia. The highest consumers of alcohol in Australia are women over the age of 45.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Alcohol plays a massive role because we're losing those hormones and the hormone levels are coming down. Hormones are very protective. And as we lose that higher level of hormone, we lose some of that protection. Alcohol is a poison in the body. Alcohol is a poison, full stop. We use alcohol in hospitals to sterilize things. All we've done is we've made it taste nice and we drink it. Now, that's a real hit on our liver. And as we age, our liver doesn't have the resilience to be able to deal with it as what it did when we were in our 20s. So alcohol plays a massive role. Women who are waking up with night sweats, night flashes, generally I would say are drinking alcohol at night. There's a direct correlation between alcohol at night and night sweats. And generally those night sweats are going to happen around about between 1 and 3 a.m. in the morning, because that's liver time in Chinese medicine. But, that's a big one. And because it is really hard, because some women are really dependent on their alcohol. But then also just looking at what else are you eating? What are you doing? Are you getting a good night's sleep? And if you're not getting a good night's sleep, what can you do? Because women do have problems sleeping as their hormones are shifting, because progesterone's gone down, and progesterone actually helps us to sleep well. The levels come down, and if our adrenal glands are exhausted, they're not making enough progesterone. So what can we do to get a better night's sleep? Getting early morning sun is a great way to reset the clock inside your brain to tell you daytime and nighttime, because these days we can live in light for as long as we want. We could do 24 hours of light if we want by just turning a fluorescent light on. Our brain, whenever we're sitting, and I'm currently sitting under a fluorescent light, it is daytime, but it's dark outside. But whenever that type of light is going through our eyes, our brain says it's daytime. If you have those lights turned on at nighttime and it's bright and it looks like daylight, your brain thinks it's daytime. So it's not producing the hormones that you require to go to sleep. So we need to start dimming down some of those lights. And that's also computer screens using blue screen and things like that, and the blue blockers, to actually get rid of that bright light that's telling our brain. We confuse our body because of the life we live, we confuse our body.
It's a very a manufactured life in a lot of ways, that the lights and the things that we do aren't what people did 100 years ago. Now, I do have a question about, a friend and I were just talking about, for me, it's not sleeplessness, it's tiredness. I could sleep 10 hours and like a rock, like I always have, but I'll just feel tired. And she was saying the same thing. Just, you hear a lot about symptoms like hot flashes, the joint pain, the sleeplessness, but I naturally don't do well with heat anyway. So I'm just kind of hotter than I've always been.
Yep.
So it's not necessarily flashing. It's just now I'm more sensitive than ever. And I'm tired of being tired. And I know I'm getting enough sleep. And I'm playing around with food, like you said, but there's unusual symptoms. Like I get this weird hives on my feet. I get hormonal headaches. I have, there's just certain things. I know that it's hormones. It's like all of a sudden I'm listening to my body and I'll be like, okay, I know that my body's fluctuating right now. I can feel it, because I'll have this I made a cup of tea and then I left. I came back and I saw the tea and I was like, did I just totally walk away from that? My daughter's like, yeah, but I took your tea bag out for you. I mean, hours later, I made the tea and walked away, but it's been a day like that today where I've got the low grade headache and I'm tired. I'm warm because it is warm where I live, but it's not helping that I'm warm. So there's these interesting, the weight gain, the meno belly. Can we talk a little bit about these symptoms that are kind of maybe not as talked about, but I'm hearing it. These women struggling with, I've never struggled with weight gain, and it doesn't matter what I do. And I'm suspicious of the adrenal gland from what I've been through in the last couple of years, that the cortisol was a little too high in my body as well. But I'd love to have you touch on adrenal fatigue, the meno belly, the exhaustion, because those are not as talked about.
Okay, they are in my world. Let's talk about them. So yes, stress definitely playing a role, because when your cortisol levels are up, basically it's influencing our insulin levels, which is our hormone to do with our blood sugar, also influencing our estrogen and progesterone and testosterone levels. So cortisol, when it's up, it's influencing a lot of different other hormones within the body, which means it's influencing the way that our body functions. So once again, it's and that this fatigue, this is to do with the connection between the brain ovaries and brain adrenal glands. So at the moment for you, there's a switch going on, and the adrenal glands, if they've been stressed, well, then we've got all this stuff going on. And when we have high cortisol levels, so we'll just go back to basics on what the adrenal glands do. So the adrenal glands are designed to keep us alive. And we've got part of our brain, our primitive part of our brain, or the lizard brain, is on alert all the time looking for danger. And we needed that in the past to keep alive when we were cave women wandering around. We didn't want to be eaten by the tiger or whatever. So it's on alert all of the time. Now, if it senses some type of threat, some type of stimulus, what happens is all of a sudden the adrenal glands produce adrenaline, or you guys call it norepinephrine. I can't say the word.
Norepinephrine.
That's it. We call it adrenaline. But basically, it's the immediate hormone that comes out. And what it does to the body, because it changes the body, is it pulls all of the blood from the center of the body and pushes it out to the arms and legs so that we can run away. Our heart rate rises so that we can actually pump more blood. Our digestive system shuts down because we no longer need to be digesting dinner. We don't want to be dinner for the tiger. So we've got all of these changes happening. Our immune system comes down because we don't really care too much about, resolving a scratch on our arm if we're going to be eaten by a tiger. So this is an immediate threat. Now, our body goes into an immediate threat, and then it kind of goes into resistance. And resistance is when the cortisol comes out. So it's a long-term stress response. Now, we get through the adrenaline stage pretty quickly, and then we move into this cortisol stage or resistance stage. And this is where we can continue to go on and on and on. And if we don't stop in that stage, if we don't come out of that stage and rest and we stay in that stage, what will happen eventually, our body will force you to rest and it will break down. So you'll get really, really sick or whatever. How many people have been on holidays and they've been working really, really hard? They go on holidays. The first thing that happens when they get there is they get sick. Yeah, it happens time and time again. And we've been in this resistance stage, and then finally we take a break and the body goes, that's it, I'm not doing anything more. So it pushes it into a rest stage. Now, the problem is this resistance stage. In the past, we were chased by a tiger and we would climb a tree, whatever, and we would sit there and we wouldn't, we would, after a while, very shortly, we would come out of resistance, we'd come back into rest and we were fine. We now spend most of our time in this resistance stage. We are constantly being bombarded by notifications, by emails, by people's demands, all of this stuff. So we go, 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 go. So what's happening when we're in this resistance stage is this is where the symptoms come. So our body, because our digestion isn't working properly, what happens, we get an imbalance within the gut bacteria, and then we start getting issues with our gut, maybe diarrhea, could be constipation. We start putting on weight around the middle. So we start storing that because we never know, we might need that in the future because, in the past we used to have famines, and maybe we're going to run out of food, so we've got to store that. And some health types, some body types actually store better than others. So this comes back to genes. So some health types will actually store better, they store more than others do. Also, where we store that fat, it depends on your genetic makeup as well. So this is kind of the life that we live, that we're living in this constant stimulus of stress. So we're just over, the cortisol is just going, 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 going. And then if we don't rest, what happens is we get adrenal burnout, and that's when you get sick. So basically where you are with this fatigue, the fatigue is telling your body that it needs to rest. And this is where understanding when your body is best to move. So, it could simply be that you're doing, I don't know your body type.
I'm not doing enough movement. Let's just be honest.
But you may not, it might be the timing of the movement. So it could be, sometimes it could be the timing of the movement. It may not necessarily be, because it's not necessarily, depending on your health type. Some health types only need 20 minutes, but they need it first thing in the morning. Others need more, but they do it, and they do this. Others need more strength work, and they do that in the afternoon. So, but in the morning, some people will thrive if they go and do a boot camp for 20 or 40 minutes and it's all high intensity, great for them, but not great for everyone. So this is where understanding your body and knowing your health type helps you to determine what's right for you. But if you've got fatigue, that's a message from your body that something is out of alignment. And so, yes, it could be the stress. Is there anything else you need to resolve? What's stressing your body? The food, is the food giving you the nutrition? Now, we have these little powerhouses in every single cell called a mitochondria, and the mitochondria help produce our energy. Now, mitochondria can get damaged really easily by toxins, by nutrient deficiency. So we need specific nutrients to actually fire up those mitochondria, and that nutrition comes from our food. Generally, I don't prescribe too much on supplements. The only one I recommend all women need to be on is a good quality magnesium, because we go through so much magnesium in our daily life because of stress and things like that. The rest of it, it's individual as to what women require. But generally, if your gut is working properly and you're digesting your food properly, so eating your food in a calm manner, not in a stressed manner, your body will actually break down that food and get the nutrition that it requires from the food. Now, obviously, if there's an issue with your gut, well, then we need to address what's going on with your gut and deal with that. But once again, that still comes from eating food. That comes from eating mainly plant foods. They're easier to digest. Eating foods that have got, fiber in them, that have got what we call prebiotic foods, all of that, when we eat that type of food. And it's really, it doesn't have to be too complicated. It's just eat the food that nature gave you. It's like, just eat that food, predominantly eat food that comes from nature. Yes, and I'm not saying you need to be a vegetarian. I'm not saying you need to be a vegan, because some body types do really actually require animal proteins. And it's just like, so rather than trying to get to a diet, it's like, what does my body want? And possibly, animal proteins might be better in the daytime, not at nighttime. So for many women, particularly if they're struggling with weight, it's removing the proteins at night and making vegetable only and only a small meal, because what protein does, it actually stimulates growth hormone. And when you've got too much weight on you, you actually don't want more growth. You're trying to get less growth. But that's okay to have that in the daytime, because the stimulation of insulin and growth hormone is okay if you're going to exercise in the afternoon, because you're going to burn that off. But once again, it comes back to what is your body? What's your specific requirement for your body, and understanding your body type. And, and that comes from your shape, your genes and all of that. But, yes, I use tools, and I teach women using tools and using an app and a platform and all of that. All of this knowledge, we already have. We already have this knowledge. It is instinctive to us. It's intuitive. And it's about starting to listen. And this is why I use the tools with my clients. And then they go, oh, now I know why I feel better when I do X, Y, Z. Now I know why I feel better when I eat this. But I was always taught this is what I needed to do. And as a nutritionist, 20 years, I had to completely change a lot of the things that I was taught once I got into this personalized health, because I realized what I'd been taught and what I was teaching worked really well for some people, but it didn't work for everybody, because there is no single solution. It's getting this individual solution. So it starts with really listening to your body. When you do things, how do you feel afterwards? How is your energy afterwards? If you're eating a really big meal at breakfast, notice what's your energy like for the next few hours afterwards. Does it go up and then it comes down and it crashes? Well, then maybe you're eating too much for breakfast. Having, if you shift that bigger meal to lunch, what will happen? Do you once again have this up and down, or do you find that when you have a bigger meal at lunchtime, that you now actually have energy to do exercise that you didn't really have in the morning? So it is about listening to your body, but primarily if you eat more plant foods, drink more water, reduce your alcohol, reduce your sugar and processed foods. And I also recommend reducing the common inflammatory foods, which are gluten-based foods and dairy. They are highly inflammatory and they're highly processed, unless, of course, you're eating raw or drinking raw milk and getting raw milk products. Here in Australia, that's illegal, very hard to get. But if you're doing raw, that's different, because it's full of different bacteria and nutrients. But most, the milk you buy at the local store, it's highly processed. It's not the same as it was when it came out of the cow. The same when you look at bread. Most of it is highly, highly processed. Gluten and the casein, which is the protein in
milk or dairy products.
Both are very, very inflammatory and very, very hard to break down in the gut and can cause issues. So, I generally pull my clients off that as well, particularly if I know they've got issues around thyroids, because many women have issues with thyroid, and we need to bring those foods out as well. Or if they've got any autoimmune diseases, I take those out as well.
Oh, well, I was going to ask you for 3 takeaways, but you literally just listed like 10 things, and I have all of them here. But I think my greatest takeaway really is to listen to your body, which, we don't have time for the story here, but I had an autoimmune disease with my thyroid, and I was knowing something was wrong and was trying to figure it out myself. So I had taken a journey because the doctor kept telling me I was fine. So definitely listening to your body and playing with food is a really great way to figure yourself out. I totally agree, because I've been through that process, and I'm currently trying it again because my body is changing. But I'd like for you to tell the listeners the resources that you offer and how they can find you and get a hold of you.
Yep, I will. I just want to say one more thing just on what you just said then. One thing, it's really important to understand that your body is changing. That as you're coming through your menopause transition, your body is changing because your hormones are changing. So your hormones tell your body what to do. As your hormones change, your body changes. Nothing you can do about that. Embrace it. It's going to change. So you can either try to continue doing what you're doing and you're going to continue to have all of these issues, or you can embrace the fact that your body is now changing and find out what you can do to support your body over the coming years and as you go through that transition. So your body is changing. You will not get the body of your 30-year-old self back again. It's just not going to be there because you don't have the hormones. So how can people find out more about me? So to start with, I do have an ebook called The Secret to Getting Rid of Your Menobelly. And in that ebook, I talk about a lot of the things I was just mentioning about the thyroid, about inflammation, insulin, and all of that. So, and I also go into starting to talk about the different body types, and I talk a little bit about that. So you can get that from my website, which is angelacounsel.com. And once you get that, you will then have the opportunity, there's a button you can click to actually sign up for a free workshop, which is called The Secret to Thriving in Menopause, where I go deeper on this. That is the last time we run this year in September, and then I'll run them again next year. But this is once again where I go deeper into the different health types, help you identify which health type you are, and then help you create the blueprint for what is required for you to have great health as you move through menopause. So I go in deeper into each of the different health types within the workshop, but I start it kind of in the ebook and then go deeper in the workshop. So that's a 5-day free workshop. So, but you can get to the workshop through the ebook. It's just as you finish, you get a click and then register, and you just put yourself on the wait list at the moment. And I will let you know when we're all ready to start, but we kick off on the 18th of September. So that's the main places. It's all over on my website, just as angelacounsel.com.
And you are also on Facebook, Instagram.
I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram as Angela Counsel. I also have a podcast called Menopause Conversations, and I have a free Facebook group called Menopause Conversations as well.
Awesome. Well, what time shall we talk tomorrow? You're my new best friend.
Tomorrow. I'm already tomorrow for you now, you know.
That's right.
I'm
yes.
already a day ahead of you.
Well, Angela, I am so grateful that you said yes to me, that you came on and you shared wisdom and truth. And I call it comfort, because the more empowered we are with truth and knowledge, we're taking our power back. And I'm so grateful for you, because you're basically saying you have the power. So the way that you deliver this information, you're a wealth of information. And I'm so grateful for you. Thank you for being on my show.
Thank you for having me. I love talking about this stuff. I talk about it till the cows come home, really, because this is what women need to know. And women, as they step into this stage of life, have the opportunity to step into their inner wisdom and become the wise women to lead those who come beyond us. And that's what I want. I want more wise women that can show the younger women what is possible. And it's, anything is possible. You can do anything in your life you want. You are at midway. It's not the end. Midway. You can create anything for the next half of your life. Make it a good half of your life.
Well, I don't even need to do an outro. You even did my outro for me. Look at you go. Friends, if you really enjoyed this conversation, if you're finding yourself changing, you think I'm too young to go through menopause, or you don't know what's happening, I would encourage you to head over to www.feminineroadmap.com/episode 282. I will have links to everything Angela. I will also have a link to her podcast. I highly encourage you to share this information with all your lady friends. We are finding that some women are hitting menopause early, the way some kids are reaching puberty early. It's never too soon to empower yourself with information to make your life healthier, happier, and more vibrant. So please share, please subscribe, please rate, please connect with Angela, and tell all of your girlfriends so that we can change the dialogue around this natural thing we go through called menopause. Thank you for being with us today. We look forward to sharing more empowering conversations and empowering women in the weeks to come. Take care, my friends.
Bye.
Bye.